This hearing of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee will come to order. Today, the committee will consider the nomination of 3 highly experienced career Foreign Service officers to be U.S. ambassadors to Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Indonesia. We never knew that Indonesia had become part of Africa, but we'll take it for the day. Glad to have you here. I met with each of you in my office last week and appreciated you making time for that. And I was, as I usually am, very impressed at the expertise and commitment and experience that you all bring to this potential new post. Burkina Faso is another West African country that recently achieved a democratic transition of power, first since its independence in 1966, with newly elected President Kabore. He enjoys considerable domestic and international goodwill. There are many economic, political, and security challenges that he faces. I thank each of you for your time today. I'm aware of the sacrifices that you make, but in particular the sacrifices that your families make for you to serve in these posts. And with that, I'll recognize the distinguished ranking member for a few comments. Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much. Thank you for having this hearing. Each of these countries presents important opportunities to advance American interests while helping to ensure peaceful and prosperous lives for hundreds of millions of people in 2 of the world's most dynamic and fastest growing regions. Burkina Faso, which translates in English to the land of the upright people, also offers reasons for optimism about the future of West Africa. After decades of autocratic rule, the people peacefully demanded democratic reforms. They are now working to further those reforms, strengthening their political institutions and civil society, and preserve a culture of peace and tolerance in a region threatened by growing extremism. Also essential are their efforts to reduce poverty by building inclusive and sustainable economic development in one of Africa's poorest countries. And last, at the center of economically dynamic Southeast Asia, Indonesia is a democracy and a secular state that also has a larger Muslim population than any other country in the world. Those facts stand as a clear rebuke to those who say that Islam is inherently antagonistic to democracy. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and we thank all of our nominees for being here today.
Well, thank you, Senator Markey. We'll now turn to our nominees. First nominee, second nominee, Andrew Young, most recently served as Deputy Chief of Mission in Mali. Previous assignments include South Korea, France, New Zealand, Burma, India, and Hong Kong. And I'm sure he's going to find a way to practice his Korean skills in Mali. Mr. Young.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, for a diplomat who has spent 25 years serving his country on 5 continents across the globe, there is no greater honor than I can feel today than to be before you today as President Obama's nominee to be the next ambassador to Burkina Faso. I'm humbled by the support that Secretary Kerry has entrusted me for this nomination. I'm joined today by Margaret Hawley, my spouse, my partner, and fellow Foreign Service officer, and my son Nathan, who is a student at American University. My daughter Claire, a student at Yale, and my mother, who's in an Adobe house in California, daughter, sister Danny, brother John, and Brother Blair, and in-laws are monitoring this from the feed from the West Coast. And if my dad were here, he would be the fellow with the big grin, smiling and illuminating the rest of the room with his irrepressible enthusiasm. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, my love for Africa began 30 years ago as an intern at our embassy in Central African Republic, Bangui. You know why we endured power outages and gamma globulin shots that hurt like the dickens. And we had terrorist attacks and monitored the trial of former Emperor Bokassa for unlynchable crimes. We also engaged as a team to help people lift themselves out of poverty, to address healthcare concerns, and to address education for women and girls and human rights. I cherished what I learned in a small town in the heart of Africa, and inspired me to take a master's degree in African Studies and to work for the Commerce Department and the Overseas Private Investment Corporation to support private sector investment in Africa. I then joined our diplomatic service, where I saw firsthand the importance of putting promotion of democracy at the forefront of U.S. foreign policy. Last year, I was honored to receive the State Department's Mark Palmer Award for Democracy for work that I had done in Burma with Aung San Suu Kyi, and my work here on Capitol Hill as a legislative fellow, and also in Mali, where, as you said, Mr. Chairman, I served for 3 years as Deputy Chief of Mission. If confirmed as the next ambassador to Burkina Faso, I will draw upon these experiences to advance our interests, prioritizing 3 core areas: good governance, security, and equitable development. As Senator Markey mentioned, the Burkinabe people bravely demonstrated their commitment to democracy in 2014 by standing firm to stop ex-President Compaoré from undermining the Constitution and extending his 27-year rule. Doing what is right and not what is easy, Burkinabe civil society, with the support of friends, including the United States, stood firm and faced the guns of the Presidential Guard who attempted to seize power in 2015. And when given the opportunity to express their views at the ballot box, the Burkinabe peoples again stood up and voted in record numbers in elections in 2015 and 2016, in elections that were judged widely as free, fair, and transparent. And today, as Senator Markey said, the leadership that's in place in Burkina Faso consents with the consent of the governed. But that democracy, that democratic transition, as you said, Senator, remains fragile. If confirmed, I would seek your support and your guidance to help the Burkinabe people consolidate that democracy as a bulwark against the instability that reigns in that tough neighborhood, which is the Sahel. Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb and other terrorist groups based in Mali, they export death and insecurity throughout the region. If confirmed, my second priority would be to address those security concerns, including the types of deadly attacks that have occurred in Ouagadougou and in Mali that I saw firsthand during my time in Mali. But in security, we have a strong partner in the people of Burkina Faso. They have deployed more than 12,000 peacekeepers in the toughest spots around the world, standing watch in our common interests to promote our common interests since 1993. So if confirmed, I work through these existing programs and also new opportunities like the National Guard State Partnership Program to help emphasize and support indigenous capacities for the Burkina Faso to deter and to respond to the types of terrorist threats that we have seen, and to advance our common goals to combat violent extremism in the Sahel. Priority 3 would be equitable development, which reinforces good governance and security. One of the brakes on Burkina Faso's growth has been inadequate infrastructure. Burkina successfully completed a 5-year, $480 million Millennium Challenge Compact in 2014 that made great advances to unlock the country's potential. Our adept USAID and Centers for Disease Control teams, they play key roles in multi-sector resiliency programs. And Burkina Faso, as you said, Senator, a land of integrity, upright people, they've earned high praise for their effective use of valuable external assistance. New resources could jumpstart Burkina as that bulwark against instability in the Sahel. Strong people-to-people ties embrace innovative exchange programs, and a vibrant Peace Corps presence that includes efforts focused on an issue near and dear to my heart, engaging youth and empowering women and girls. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, as we meet in this historic chamber, I'm struck again by the awesome responsibility levied on an ambassador to protect fellow Americans. I have faced that responsibility during my time in Mali and when we confronted terrorism and defeated the Ebola threat. If confirmed, I will above all endeavor to protect American citizens and interests abroad. I will work to support good governance, which is the bedrock of effective society that reflects our shared values. And I would seek to advance U.S. national security while promoting equitable development. And finally, if confirmed, I would look to you for counsel and support to advance these common interests. I welcome your questions, and thank you so much for considering my nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Mr. Young, talk for a minute, if you can, drawing on your experience in other African countries as well, and most recently in Mali. How does our soft power or programs to USAID, Millennium Challenge, and others help in terms of security cooperation in these countries? Is it a necessary part? Is it helpful or not?
Thank you, Senator. I think you've honed in on exactly one of the great attributes we have to advance our national interests in places like Mali and in places like Burkina Faso, where I could confirm to be able to serve there. We have an extraordinarily high level of public support in both those countries. The United States is perceived to be a partner who looks to support the common interests of our partners in Burkina Faso and our partners in Mali, where I recently spent 3 years. And I think that opens the door for us to find that common interest to solve a problem. I can give you some examples. When we were in Mali, the team worked very, very carefully to develop a security component. And in that security component, we had a National Guard team that showed goodwill but lacked training and capacity. Through a series of interventions, we helped this team respond and create a quick reaction force that helped provide security around our embassy. Later, when we continued the mentoring program, that quick reaction force was able to follow behind some of our teams that responded to the attack on the Radisson Hotel, again showing their capacity to take the fight to the enemy under the leadership and a partnership with Americans. And then finally, when we were attacked, a neighbor was attacked about 400 meters from the embassy a few months later. That quick reaction force responded directly under their own initiative to provide life-saving aid to their fellow citizens. I think that sort of teamwork that we empower enables us to advance our common interests.
Thank you. Mr. Donovan, we're right now.
Mr. Young, the people in Burkina Faso, they live in a very dangerous neighborhood. There are terrorist groups coming from pretty much all directions towards that government. And I guess my question to you is, what do you think the chances are of this government not ultimately being able to withstand its own internal stresses and that it could be overturned in a way that did not reflect its democratic values?
So thank you, Senator. You highlight the core challenge before us, but I think you also, as in your introduction, highlight the core resource upon which we can build to address that problem. Burkina Faso, the land of people of integrity. This is a historic opportunity for us to invest in that fragile democracy and invest in those nascent security institutions to ensure that our interventions and the will of the Burkinabe people to build a democracy at this crucial point in their history reaches its fruition. So I would say this is an opportunity for us to inoculate this fragile democracy from the challenges. And if I were confirmed, I would keep your question and your themes at the forefront of every activity that I would do to move forward.
Okay, thank you. And once again, thank you to the families that are here. We understand and appreciate greatly the sacrifices that you all make to have family members serve in these posts. And with thanks to the committee, this hearing is adjourned.